Welcome into OutKick the show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis. We keep stacking wins. I'm going to tell you what those look like here in a moment, but I hope all of you are having fabulous Tuesdays, no matter where you are around the country or indeed around the world. Major news this morning. Facebook changed everything. Mark Zuckerberg basically did everything that I've wanted Mark Zuckerberg to be doing for the last 4 years. It's a seismic win. I'm going to tell you why I believe that is the case. I'm going to break it all down for you from the perspective both of an individual and also of someone who has run a media company and what that impact has meant, the censorship regime that has been endorsed by Facebook, what that has meant for me, what that has meant for OutKick, and why I feel supreme vindication over the statement that Mark Zuckerberg released this morning. We're going to talk about Snowmageddon coming towards Dallas, also my hometown of Nashville, which does not handle snow well, expecting a lot of snow, but in particular, the college football playoff game between Ohio State and Texas could be dramatically impacted by a snowfall, not in the game itself, because the game's being played in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, but because we may have basically Dallas have to shut down because it's like Nashville. They don't handle big snowfall or really any snowfall at all very well. News, Tyreek Hill wants out of Miami. The Titans have fired their general manager, Rand Carthon. That's newsworthy, particularly on a national level, because whoever the new GM is will theoretically have the number one overall draft pick to make, and this is an important hire to make. We also have a tremendous poop dilemma for all of you to analyze. Trust me, this is going to be fun. And Donald Trump Jr. is right now, or was, alongside of Charlie Kirk in Greenland. Could we be adding Greenland to the United States footprint? All of that to be discussed by your boy as we roll through the program today. But I want to start with this. Bravo, Mark Zuckerberg, for the statement you made this morning about ending effectively censorship and fact-checking on Facebook, relocating all of the so-called fact-checkers from California to Texas, which is significant in the event of lawsuit because of the laws that are in place in the state of Texas compared to the state of California. Now, some of you have been longtime OutKick fans. Some of you, to be fair, right now listening to me, have been reading and commenting and sharing stories that I've been doing for 20 years. Since I first sat down in front of a laptop in the late summer of 2004 and started writing with an audience of 0 over 20 years ago. Some of you have been with me for much of that time. Others of you found me when I was doing 3HL, local Nashville sports talk, Fox Sports Radio nationwide, Lock It In, Fox Bet Live. Some of you have found me recently on Fox News and Clay and Buck. Some of you found us online at OutKick. I understand that you guys have come in from a variety of different perspectives. One of the things that I am most proud of in my career is I have, to the point where I've almost been fired over it, been a steadfast supporter of absolutism when it comes to First Amendment and free speech. To the point where in 2017, some of you first became aware of me when I went on, it's now been, 7 years ago, CNN, and said I only believed in two things completely, the First Amendment and boobs. And that clip continues to go viral. For 7 years now, it's been circulating on the internet. And many of you, that's probably the most viral thing in terms of videos that I've ever put out there, in terms of it was the number one story in America. A lot of you found me then. Okay. What I've always argued for is a robust, no pun intended, robust and uninhibited marketplace of ideas. And my idea has been the cure for speech you don't like is more speech. There are awful things that have been said about me in my 20-year career, much of it untrue. But I haven't ever tried or sued or tried to get somebody banned for what they've said about me. I've just continued to make the arguments that I make. And over time, my arguments have won because I think they're better than the arguments of people who disagree with me. And one of the arguments that I've made that I think is the most significant is in 2021, I went to Washington, D.C., and I testified on Capitol Hill about what Facebook's censorship regime was doing to a company like OutKick. And let me take you back in time, not very long ago. After January 6, 2021, all of the following companies banned Donald Trump from being able to be on their platforms. And I may be missing some. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Snapchat, Instagram, Shopify, Reddit, Twitch, TikTok, even Pinterest banned Donald Trump from being able to have accounts on their social media platforms. Pinterest! Donald Trump couldn't even have decided to start a knitting company. He couldn't have decided to start a mitten company. He couldn't have decided to start a traditional wife-infused company on Pinterest. He wasn't even allowed to share his brownie recipes. This was, and still is, in my opinion, actually one of the most dangerous threats to American life that we have ever seen. Because in one fell swoop, every single big tech company decided that Donald Trump didn't have the right to speak on their platform. And it wasn't just Trump. Parler, some of you will remember Parler as a free speech alternative to Twitter at the time. Amazon even banned Parler from being able to use Amazon Web Services so that the website was effectively taken off the internet. And this was incredibly chilling. And I went and testified on Capitol Hill. I will share my my testimony, which you put into written record. But I shared the data of what happened when we were doing stories which were not favorably disposed by the Facebook algorithm. And in particular, I started off by saying on August 11th, 2020, Donald Trump, I've now interviewed Donald Trump, I think 10 times. The very first time that I interviewed him on my show, OutKick the Coverage, was in August of 2020. When we started writing about that, Facebook completely destroyed our traffic. We had our readership vanish. 68% of our Facebook user audience and 76% of our new users vanished. I shared the exhibits of the internal OutKick traffic. That wasn't the end of it. It was a clear to me attempt to let it be known that what we were doing was not going to be well received. And this has continued when I was speaking. This had just happened in 2021. We got an email from Facebook. It said, subject, important notification, misinformation violation. This is the kind of thing that you would get from Facebook when you ran a media company. And what had we done wrong? According to the fact checkers at Facebook, we shared an opinion piece that the fact checkers disagreed with. This was an opinion piece by Dr. Marty McCary, who is now going to be the head of the FDA. I think I misspoke earlier on Clay and Buck. I meant to correct it. I said he was going to be the head of the CDC. He's actually going to be the head of the FDA. And he had written a website. He had written an editorial for the Wall Street Journal that we had written about. And this was an opinion piece giving his opinion that herd immunity was going to arrive in 2021. And we were accused of misinformation. It's not the first time. It happened a lot. We were also accused of misinformation for linking to the CDC's own website on COVID data. And when we did these two stories, our traffic dropped by over 80% from Facebook. Now, in this era, it's important for me. I'm talking as Clay Travis, media executive. There are basically two ways to make money on media. One is subscription business. The other is advertising. That is essentially how every media business makes money. Now, you can also say, well, some media businesses, they put on events. To me, that's really more of an events business, but it's connected to the media business. Other media companies can sell products. Like, right, we've sold millions of dollars over the years in OutKick gear. Like, I'm wearing an OutKick T-shirt right now. You can sell books. Like I said, we've sold a lot of gear. We've sold a lot of product over the years. But basically, there are two big rubrics of how people make money: subscription and from advertising. Advertising is primarily, there are some exceptions, but it's primarily an audience-based product. That is, the bigger the audience you have, the more you can charge advertisers to reach that audience. When Facebook, which at the time was the single largest source of audience outside of the website itself for virtually any media company in the world, when they decide that they're not going to send you traffic anymore, your business is curtailed immensely. And the message, as I wrote and as I spoke, was that if you share opinions that Facebook doesn't like, the fact checkers there will be huge consequences. All I have been arguing for, and this is important, is for there to be an open marketplace and for there to be free and fair, transparent debate that is allowed to take place on those platforms. This is very different from what the Biden administration argued. The Biden administration argued that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and all these other different sites, that they should be censoring opinions that were not in favorable positions according to the Biden administration. The Biden administration could not censor those opinions themselves because of the First Amendment. But it is important to think about this. If the First Amendment allows the government to then take the next step and actually tell these other companies, hey, you should censor this or else there will be consequences, under the First Amendment and all of the restrictions on governmental activity in the Bill of Rights, the government can't deputize to another entity and act itself, which would be prohibited by the government. This is the essence of what I've been arguing for years. And Mark Zuckerberg now is making the same arguments that I've been making for years, which is the Biden administration clearly decided that they didn't like speech and put pressure on big tech companies to censor that speech. That is, to me, a First Amendment violation. So Zuckerberg told this to Jim Jordan, and I give immense credit to Representative Jim Jordan and his staff, who have worked as hard as anybody out there I know in government to try and keep the big tech platforms from censoring content that they don't like or that the government tells them they shouldn't like, that they should be restricted. All of this matters because the entire foundation of being a democratic republic is actually predicated on a large marketplace of ideas. And that you and I should be able to debate what policy should be, and that after robust, uninhibited debate in that marketplace of ideas, we are likely to end up in a better place than if the debate is artificially circumscribed and curtailed, which is what the Biden administration wanted to do. This is important. All the Trump administration is arguing for here is, hey, don't put your finger on the scales when it comes to arguments. Just like we're going to use community notes like Twitter does to allow the public to recognize when there may be factual inaccuracies. But we're not actually going to wade into the debate itself. All Mark Zuckerberg is saying here is we are not going to be in the fact check business. And let me hammer this home. The fact check business is guaranteed to fail because who checks the fact checkers? A lot of what fact checkers get involved in is actually opinion, not fact. For instance, and I've used this argument for a long time, but I think it kind of brings it home. A lot of people don't understand the difference between facts and opinions. If I tell you, hey, I think water freezes at 35 degrees, it's a bad argument because you can prove, actually, Clay, water freezes at 32 degrees. And so you are factually inaccurate, and therefore I'm going to trust you less going forward. That's what should happen. Facts should matter. But an opinion is different. And I'm going to go into a sports example here, and I think this will kind of clarify for you. We're about to start the by the way, my opinion is that it's likely to snow in Dallas Thursday and Friday. You can disagree with that, but you can't tell me that I'm wrong until we get to Thursday or Friday and find out what the result is, right? Fact, 32 degrees, water freezes. Opinion, I think we're going to have a snowstorm based on the evidence in Dallas. Okay, let's go to sports. One of the big challenges out there, because you guys understand sports, and I love sports, and you're going to follow along with me on this. The NFL wildcard starts this weekend. Kansas City Chiefs are the 1 seed in the AFC. Detroit Lions are the 1 seed in the NFC. If I said to you, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year, you might agree or disagree. If you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, you might say, hey, they're 15-2, Clay. They've looked pretty good. But you could agree or disagree with me. That's my opinion. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year. You can agree or disagree with me. But if I say to you, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year because Patrick Mahomes can't win the big game and he's never won a Super Bowl in his entire career, you might agree with my opinion, but the facts that my opinion are based on are wrong. Patrick Mahomes has actually won 3 Super Bowls. He's actually won, objectively and subjectively, a lot of big games. So you might agree with my conclusion, but you should trust me less because the facts that I based my opinion on are inaccurate. One of the big flaws that we have in media today is a lot of people look to the conclusion as evidence of whether or not they trust someone, and they don't look to the factual basis upon which that opinion is based. Every opinion is only as good as the fact-based foundation upon which it is levied, built. So if I'm wrong on facts, then you should trust my opinion less. This is why I work so hard to get my facts right. Now, I end up being wrong on my opinions all the time. That's what happens when you give predictions. You know, if you could win 55% of all of your bets, you would end up a trillionaire almost overnight if you kept betting every single day that you won. Do you know that? A lot of people don't know the math and how that works out. It only takes about 52.3% when you consider the VIG to win, to make money in sports gambling. Almost no one does. Sports gambling is fun. The reason why I invest my money primarily in S&P 500 index funds is because most money managers can't beat the S&P 500 index fund. They can't beat the market. It's hard to beat the market. I bring all this up because the distinction between opinion and fact creates all sorts of challenges for so-called fact checkers. And as Mark Zuckerberg laid out, really what those fact checkers became was de facto arms of the Democrat Party, and they would simply say, at the encouragement and the behest of the Biden administration, you can't say that. You can't make that argument. And that's why I have always said, you should be able to argue anything. Like, I don't think you're right when you say, hey, we've never been to the moon, but I don't think you should be censored for arguing it. The entire point of a democratic republic with free speech is the idea that the more speech we have, the better result we will end up with. And so you'll hear me all the time say, I think that's a moronic argument. Or, in my opinion, that person is too stupid to be able to make a living in media. But I will engage with awful arguments. Like yesterday, Sonny Hostin said that January 6th was like the Holocaust, slavery. It's crazy. And I actually said I think she's too dumb, and all of her fans are too dumb to be able to make a living in media. But I don't think that her Twitter account should be taken away. I don't think that whatever Facebook page she has should be taken away. I think she should be able to argue, stupidly in my opinion, for her positions. And I've always advocated for that. In fact, you go back to the First Amendment and boobs video, watch it on CNN. I was actually defending Jamel Hill, who I think has a lot of moronic takes, for the right to have her own opinions in her private life and not get fired from ESPN because of it, because I stand on the principle, which is similar, that you shouldn't fire Kurt Schilling for saying he thinks transgender people using bathrooms aren't heroic, and you shouldn't fire anybody out there who says that, for instance, Jamel Hill wanted to say that Donald Trump was a white supremacist. I disagree. I think she's totally wrong, but I don't think she should not be able to have that opinion. By the way, breaking news, Antonio Pierce has been fired as the Raiders head coach. That job is now open. I'm going to dive into some of these in a moment. I'll go ahead and tell you in advance, it's going to turn into a huge racial issue. Rand Carthon gets fired by the Tennessee Titans. Gerard Mayo gets fired by the New England Patriots. Now Antonio Pierce gets fired. People can only see race. They're going to say the only reason they got fired was because they're black. Welcome to First Take tomorrow. Just telling you that's where we're headed. But the Facebook decision is an incredibly important one. And some of you out there are like, well, it took long enough. Yeah, it did. I agree. But what Mark Zuckerberg said in that video is as close to a mea culpa, in other words, that he was wrong, as you're going to get from a big tech exec. And I think the big takeaway here is, to a large extent, Elon Musk's bravery in standing for free speech principles via his purchase of Twitter has actually led to other executives, whether it's Jeff Bezos at Amazon, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, whether it is Sundar Pichai at Google, whether it is Tim Cook at Apple. A lot of these big tech executives, deep in their heart, knew that what they were doing was wrong, but they were too cowardly to stand up against the mob. And it took Elon stepping forward and taking the slings and arrows in favor of free speech for these other guys to follow him in the charge in support of free speech. And again, think about this. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Snapchat, Instagram, Shopify, Reddit, Twitch, TikTok, and Pinterest all banned Donald Trump. Our own our own Facebook page was censored for sharing Donald Trump interviews with me. Our YouTube page on Clay and Buck was censored, not allowed to share interviews with Donald Trump because of what he said in those interviews. Wait a minute. The entire purpose of a presidential campaign or a Senate campaign or a congressional campaign is that every voter should be able to hear all of the opinions of the candidates running for office, true or false, and be able to make decisions based on those opinions. When you censor political candidates, you're actually censoring the legitimate democratic process, and that is effectively, to me, what is being acknowledged as having been wrong by Mark Zuckerberg. I think this is tremendously important. I give Mark Zuckerberg credit for coming to the right conclusion. Took him a long time, but I do think it is the right result, and I think that the country will benefit from his choice to move away from fact-checking. And I would encourage the Washington Post and CNN and all these other places that have engaged in left-wing opinion often checking as opposed to fact checking, because that's where it bleeds into to reassess the decisions that they're going to make. I just mentioned Antonio Pierce, according to Adam, texting me that Antonio Pierce has been fired. This now means there are, let me make sure and get all these different jobs that are open, that are outstanding right now. And there are certainly a lot of those. Robert Saleh was fired on October 8th by the Jets. Dennis Allen fired by the Saints on November 4th. Matt Eberflus fired by the Bears on November 29th. Gerard Mayo fired by the Patriots. Doug Peterson fired by the Jags. And now Antonio Pierce fired. I believe I am correct that Dennis Allen was in year one. Am I correct that Dennis Allen was in year one? I know he hasn't been the coach of the Saints for very long. I also know that we went from this guy is a genius after 2 weeks of the Saints to this guy is a moron and getting fired in record time, like 8 weeks. Remember when everybody was praising the Saints? I think the Saints started off 2-0. I'll also point out the Bengals fired their defensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator of the Bengals, whose name I'm forgetting right now, just a couple of years ago was considered to be the absolute apex of the coaching ranks. Like, people were excited to give that Bengals defensive coordinator a head job. He didn't get a head job. He stayed and continued to coach, and now he's getting fired as the defensive coordinator going forward. The Titans firing GM Ran Carthon, to me, is the most consequential of these decisions. Sorry, Allen was in his third season as head coach, defensive coordinator before that. So he took over basically for Sean Payton. I couldn't remember exactly how long he had been there. By the way, Jets, Saints, Bears, Patriots, Jags, and now Raiders all have open jobs. That is 6 open jobs. How would you rank these jobs right now? None of them look that good to me. Jets, you don't know what you're going to do at quarterback with Aaron Rodgers. Jets are the only team, I think, basically in the last decade that hasn't been in the playoffs. Saints, Derek Carr is aging. Do you feel like he is an elite quarterback? I do not. Saints are in a tough spot. Bears probably is where I would go first, because I think Caleb Williams, with the right coach, could have a difference maker there. I also liked what I saw from Drake May in year one with the Patriots. So I probably would say of these jobs, the Bears and the Patriots would have the most appeal to me, because at least you potentially have a franchise quarterback. Now, Doug Peterson was supposed to fix Trevor Lawrence. That didn't happen, which is why I wouldn't put the Jags very high on the flow chart of good gigs. I probably would say the Bears and the Patriots if, and it's a big if, do you believe in Caleb Williams? Do you believe in Drake May based on what you saw? Both of these guys gave enough nuggets of potential excitement that maybe I would be out there and say, okay, if I had to choose as a head coach, Patriots, you have a good owner in Robert Kraft at least. Bears, I don't know about the ownership group, but they're not awful. They just have never won. I think probably Bears-Patriots are 1A and 1B. You can argue either direction. I liked Drake May a little bit more, I think, than I did Caleb Williams in general, but I could see either of those teams. I'm not very excited about the Jags, the Raiders, the Jets, the Saints, because I just don't know where they go at the quarterback position, it doesn't seem like there's an easy answer there. They're either kind of locked in with an old guy that isn't that great, or there aren't a lot of great quarterbacks coming out necessarily in this year's draft. And where do you make the move to get better at those positions? That's probably where I would point to. But that's my analysis in general. All right. Tyreek Hill says that he wants out of the Dolphins. I think the challenge for Tyreek Hill is he's an incredibly talented wide receiver. But Tyreek Hill has demonstrated that wide receivers don't matter as much as we like to think that they do. By and large, all that matters is a quarterback. Have the Chiefs really struggled very much without Tyreek Hill? No. Patrick Mahomes has continued to win at a phenomenally high level, even without Tyreek Hill. And even with the numbers that Tyreek Hill has posted alongside of Jalen Waddle with Tua, granted you've had health issues with Tua. QB1 hasn't been healthy consistently in Miami, but they haven't been able to take the next step. And this is a question I was asked. I think it's a good one. In the Super Bowl era, has the best player on a Super Bowl winning team ever been the wide receiver? Think about that for a minute. I think the answer is no. Not to say there haven't been a lot of talented wide receivers. Jerry Rice, amazing. Marvin Harrison, phenomenal. But Joe Montana and Peyton Manning were the straw that stirred that drink. Tyreek Hill's a really talented dude. Patrick Mahomes is who matters. Has there been a team that won a Super Bowl where the most impressive and important player on the team was wide receiver? Jerry Rice is probably the closest to the answer. And even then, I would say Joe Montana mattered more. We overvalue wide receivers. The quarterback makes the wide receiver. The wide receiver almost never makes the quarterback. I would argue with you that the best wide receiver in terms of making a quarterback, maybe ever, Randy Moss with the Minnesota Vikings and what he did for Dante Culpepper. Dante Culpepper never did anything without Randy Moss. And I think you can make the argument that in the 21st century, the single most dominant quarterback that has existed, most dominant receiver that has existed in the game was Randy Moss in terms of what he was capable of doing on the season. Remember, they almost went 19-0 with him with the New England Patriots. I think Randy Moss probably the best wide receiver in the 21st century in terms of how much he changed the game. That's my argument. You guys may disagree. Right now, we'll see what happens with Sam Darnold. Could you argue that Jefferson is potentially that for him? Maybe. That Jefferson is the most valuable wide receiver in the NFL right now for what he has meant for the quarterback position. I would argue, for instance, that Derrick Henry is the most important running back, best running back of his era for what he has meant to quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill basically doesn't have a career until he starts to be able to hand off to Derrick Henry. Look at what Lamar Jackson did this year. Derrick Henry runs for 1,900 yards. Lamar Jackson hasn't been able to throw the ball at all. Suddenly Lamar Jackson is one of the best downfield passers out there. Why is that? I think because you have to respect the play-action game, and defenses fear Derrick Henry so much that whether you're Ryan Tannehill or Lamar Jackson, you have to be concerned about it. In fact, that's why I would argue, if I had an NFL MVP vote, that Josh Allen should be the MVP, because nobody on the Bills' offense is anywhere near as dynamic as Derrick Henry. In fact, I would love to see Derrick Henry playing with Josh Allen. That'd be a really fun combo to see. All right, Snowmageddon coming. Be careful. Be very careful. In Dallas. Nashville snow evidently coming in on Friday. I saw some people arguing you have to move the game. Come on. It's an indoor game. If fans can't get to the game, that's a tough break. Get the teams to the game. I don't think that there is any doubt that it is going to happen. Major winter storm, likely widespread, massive amounts of snow. Thank you to Adam, who is sharing the absolute latest with me. The line of demarcation is, heaviest snow in Nashville. How much snow are they saying we're going to get now? Nashville does not do well with a lot of snow. And if you look all throughout Texas, monster amounts of snow. The color band that I'm seeing here looks like it's running basically through Little Rock and Nashville on this most recent major winter storm Thursday to Saturday. Now, obviously, Nashville, for those of you who don't know, Nashville is the king of all states. Tennessee is the king of this, I think. Of all cities, I would argue Nashville is probably the king of this from a city perspective. It's either going to be 33 and raining, or it's going to be 31 degrees and you're going to get like 8 inches of snow. No city in America is on the line more than Nashville. Like the most challenging place. Got ice in my mouth. It's the most challenging place in America to forecast snow. We're always right on that line. So if you're a forecaster, you're either going to look brilliant. It's going to be like, hey, it's going to be 31 degrees and you guys are going to get 6 inches of snow and the whole city shut down. Or it's going to be like 33 degrees and it's just going to be a cold rain and there's going to be no impact. And then sometimes we get the mix, which is like the worst thing out there, where you're right on that freeze or don't freeze line, and instead of being one or the other, it's just like black ice. Like we got black ice the other day. I'm telling you guys, nobody even knows it's there. The black ice is, I think, the most dangerous of the weather conditions because nobody knows it's there. You go walking outside, next thing you know, you slipped, you busted your ass, and you're dead. In my neighborhood, maybe a couple of years ago, people were trying to park. You couldn't even stop a car. It was just sliding down the sides of hills. It was running into everything, straight ice. No snow, just like freezing rain, black ice. It's the worst possible. I'm telling you, we're always like a degree or so away from 32 degrees. Go a little bit further south, almost never get snow. You go further north, almost always get snow. Nashville is like the buckle of the snow belt. We just get right on the line. You got no idea what's going to happen. So anyway, look out for Snowmageddon. Donald Trump Jr. and Charlie Kirk, I saw this. They're in Greenland. I actually think there's a decent chance we end up acquiring the territory of Greenland. And everybody out there is going to say I'm crazy. But I used to live in a territory. I lived in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm actually familiar with territorial law. Used to be very common, right? You would buy land. Louisiana Purchase, 1803. Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. Add a lot of the Southwest, the Texas region, which is not just Texas. Also had parts of New Mexico, parts of California, parts of Arizona, if I'm remembering correctly, in terms of the land that we got from Mexico. Seward's Folly, 1860s, the decision to buy Alaska. This is all off the top of my head, by the way, because I'm a history nerd. 5 AP US history. Hate to brag. College history, American history focus, major. Not a bragger, but I probably know way more about American history than you do. Lived in the U.S. Virgin Islands, 19 teens, acquired as part of World War I prep. 1898. The Spanish-American War, we acquired some aspects of the Caribbean, including Puerto Rico. Pacific West, and a lot of you are going to say, what about Alaska and Hawaii? Become states? Yes, in the, whatever it is, the 40s, 50s, those guys became states, 49 and 50. But if you look at the global Arctic trade, Greenland actually makes a ton of sense. 55,000 people live there. I think they would probably rather be a part of the United States than a part of Denmark. We'll see. This is going to be a fun story. I kind of love this. Maybe I'm going to have to go visit Greenland too. All right, let's close with some fun. They're about to be up on the on Hot Mic with Withrow and Hutton. Let's close with some fun. I have a clip. This is a moral dilemma for all of you. A DoorDash driver arrived to deliver food and immediately says that he's got bad diarrhea and he's going to poop his pants, and he begs to come in and use the toilet. What would you do? It is time for moral debate season. Watch.
Hi, I have diarrhea. Please let me use your bathroom. Please, please, please. I can't. I'm going to myself. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please.
Please get out of my house.
I'm going to. Please. I'm begging you.
Get out of my house.
I can't stop.
You're scaring my children. Get out of my house.
Okay, I'm team mom here. As a single man, or if I were a man inside of a house, I might be willing to let another man into my house if he claims that he's going to poop himself. But as a woman with children, no way you let the man in the house. 0% chance. I would tell my wife, I would tell every single woman out there watching this, you do not let a strange man into your house. Everything about this feels a bit odd. I do think it is a moral dilemma. I might be somewhat generous in allowing this guy in. But what if he makes a huge mess in your bathroom? That actually makes me think I might say no anyway. Is this guy going to clean it? I doubt it. What if he's got some awful infection and he's just like destroying your bathroom? Mom is 100% right not to let this guy in. I'm even inclined to think that single guy or guy living by himself who doesn't feel the same physical threat, maybe the decision here is to say no too. Look, the DoorDash driver had to get to your place. He had to drive past gas stations. He had to drive past other places that he could theoretically have stopped and made the decision to go to the bathroom there. Some of you may think that I'm a heartless wretch for this, but I actually have to go with Team Mom here. And also, even for men, I think I'm probably Team No, I'm not letting you in my house to go to the bathroom. Sorry. DoorDash drivers, you're on your own. Judge Clay has ruled, and with the wisdom of Solomon, the mom is right. You were wrong. Poop your pants. All right. I love all of you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I am Clay Travis. This has been OutKick, the show.